Welcome to this first lecture. This is all about how to write an effective 5-paragraph essay. I haven't done one of these before, so hopefully you can follow along. I'm going to be writing up here in the smartboard, and I'll try to go kind of quickly through this. It'll be fairly brief, but if you have any questions, feel free to pause the video and go over what you need to do. I always say that we should start with a brainstorm. The brainstorm is a really effective way to get going. And the first thing that you need to do is you need to think about the question that you're going to answer. So for this essay, I'm going to say that my question is, what is the best sport? So let me go ahead and put that down here. All right. So we're going to talk about what the best sport is and what's the best sport. There we go. Sorry about that. But the thing that's going to happen is I'm going to come up with as many possible answers as I can. I'm going to take my time to really think through the best possible answers. So anything that I can think of can go here. I'm going to start, say, baseball is a great possible thing. So is luge. I love watching luging on the Olympics. Then there's distance running. I run distances all the time. I really love watching relay races when I'm coaching track. There's also obstacle courses. I love those American Ninja shows and Wipeout and everything else like that. In addition, I suppose we could talk about football. Obviously, we could talk about hockey since we're living in Minnesota. Basketball, obviously, is another great sport. And I really, when I was a kid, I really loved pro wrestling. I always thought that it was real, and it's kind of funny. I always like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my different topics and I'm going to just pick one. So let's think about this a little bit. I think I might pick professional wrestling just because, it was the thing that I started with. It was one of my first things, so I'm just going to abbreviate it as pro wrestling. And one reason I loved why was because of all the costumes. I thought the costumes and the characters were really funny. They always made me laugh. And, I also really liked the violence because, of course, I was a little kid and violence is funny. I actually, when I say that out loud, I don't think that's a very good reason. And I mean, I really haven't watched pro wrestling in a while, so this probably is not my favorite sport, and it's probably then not the best sport. So it's probably best if I don't write about that, but that's okay because this is brainstorming, so nothing goes wrong. I'm just thinking of ideas here. So let's pick another one. Baseball was my first thought, so maybe let me try baseball again. So here we go. We'll try baseball. And what are some reasons why baseball is the best? Well, I love the history of baseball. It's been around forever. It's really meaningful to a lot of people. The history is probably a good reason. The uniforms are really cool to look at. No other sport has those kind of uniforms. I like that a lot. The athletic ability, you have to run, you have to jump, you have to throw, you have to hit, you have to do all that stuff. It's really exciting. I mean, all those things can happen at once. It comes down to the last second. It's cerebral too. It takes a lot of thinking. You've got to think through all those things. And hey, look, I've got 5 reasons here, right? I've got 5 reasons. That's a lot of reasons. In a 5-paragraph essay, I only need 3 reasons. So I've definitely got enough reasons. I can start to narrow myself down a little bit. And I can start to think about some more details for the reasons. So let's talk about the history first. Like the way the game started is really important to me. And I also think about how the game's changed ourselves throughout history. It changed us through Jackie Robinson and ending the Jim Crow era and casual racism. It also changed us and getting a lot more money in sports. That was another big thing. I also think that it's our game, it's the American game. I think that's an important thing too. I don't think I've got a lot of evidence for uniforms, but with athletics, like I said, you have to jump, you have to run, you've got to catch the ball, you've got to throw the ball, you've got to hit, and that's something that athletes say is the hardest part of baseball. So that's a good one too. I said that it was exciting, and I said that the cerebral part is really interesting to me and really exciting to me. So I think that cerebral part's actually a reason or detail about how exciting it is. So I can go with that. Other exciting things about baseball, I really think that the way that it's impossible to predict, you can't predict it. Anything can happen on any given day. The worst team can beat the best team. You can also think about Jackie Robinson. He made the game really exciting just by standing on the bases and forcing pitchers to do the wrong thing. So that's another good example there too. So I've got a lot of different reasons here. I've got lots of details for my reasons. I've got many reasons. I've got a good topic here. This brainstorm really worked. And it worked because I took my time. So when you do a brainstorm, think through a lot of possible answers. Don't just go with your gut instinct. Think about your various possible answers and then come through your reasons why. The more you can do that, the stronger your overall essay is because we'll use these things in just a little bit when we're working on the body paragraphs and we're working on the thesis statements. And that's the next big step. We're going to start talking about introductions here in a second, and what we'll do is we're going to use exactly what we've got here in our introductions. So with our introductions, our very first point is to start with the thesis statement, okay? And we're going to start by looking at our topic, baseball, and then we're going to answer the question, baseball is the best sport. And then I'm going to use my examples from before to talk about why it is. Baseball is the best sport because of, I'm going to use the BC here to summarize, it's the best sport because of its history, right? Then we got the athleticism, and then we've got, what was my third reason? Oh, hey, I've got it on the brainstorming, so let's just take a look back. Yeah, that's right. It's exciting. It's exciting. So, and it's exciting. And that's got our thesis statement. Now, the really nice thing about this is I always say you start with the thesis because that's the most important part. That's the whole core of your argument. But what we're going to do is we're not just going to have it here at the top of our introduction, we're going to use it down below. It's going to be the last sentence of our introduction. We'll get people into our topic, and then before we get into the meat of the assignment, before we get into the meat of our argument, we're going to give them the thesis. The thesis is going to lay out exactly what we're going to talk about throughout the whole essay. So, the first thing that we actually are going to have in our whole paper is what we call the hook. And the hook is going to be something that catches people's eye. We can catch their eye with a stat like over 500 million people attend baseball games every year, and that's between minor leagues, high school leagues, college leagues, the pros, everybody. There's lots of people who go see baseball games. I could give a quote, like one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite writers of all time. It was all about how baseball is chess. And that might not sound that exciting, but he says it's chess made flesh, which I think is really a cool image. And that's from one of my favorite authors, a guy named John Fowles, so I should make sure I give him credit for that. And then we could do some other things too if you don't like the quote. If you don't have a quote ready to go, you could do something like a bit of imagery. You can describe it in a lot of depth. You can talk about the sound of the game when it's going on, the organ that's being played. I should make sure that I put the imagery up here. Sorry. I just started talking, but as you can see, I get kind of involved with imagery, so I could talk for a long time about the smell of peanuts and Cracker Jacks and everything else. So that might not be good. The last thing I need to do though is a question, and it could be a rhetorical question, maybe something like, "Have you ever been to a baseball game?" or "Do you like baseball?" or "Do you know what's great about baseball?" Make the reader think a little bit, and then give them our details. I'm not as fond of rhetorical questions; they're not really my favorite thing. So, I've got this great quote. I love this quote, and I'm going to do that. But now the next step is the connection. And what I need to do is I need to connect the idea of chess made flesh and John Fowles with the idea that it's the best sport. And that's a little bit tricky. But what you want to do is you want to link in your connection sentence back to what you just said in the hook and on to what you're about to say in the thesis. So I'll talk about John Fowles because he's the writer, right? So John Fowles, what do I want to say here? How am I going to connect this the best? I can say that John Fowles is right, right? He is. John Fowles is right, but there's more, or there are more reasons why baseball is the best. And now what I've done is I've talked about John Fowles, who was in my hook, and I've talked about why baseball is the best. I might say baseball rocks just so that I don't get burdened down with saying best, 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 best. But now I've got what I really need. I've got the hook, which is the interesting thing. That's the thing that's going to get people's attention. I've got the connection that ties it on to the next sentence, the most important sentence in the whole intro and really in the whole essay, and that's the thesis sentence. The thesis sentence has my whole argument in one little sentence. And I'm going to use my thesis sentence to guide the next part of the essay. Those are the body paragraphs. I'm going to use each one of my 3 reasons to be my 3 body paragraphs for my 5-paragraph essay, right? Intro, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion. That makes a total of 5. So that's what we're going to get to next here. We'll come back to the body paragraphs, and I'm going to use again my reasons to be the topics of each one. So I'll say that history is my first one. I'll say that athleticism is going to be my second, and I'm going to say that being exciting is my third reason. So that's how we're going to set up this essay. Now, rather than actually writing all 3 of those body paragraphs, I think what's going to be best is if I just do one of them. So I'm going to start with my first body paragraph, my first reason, And then it's always good to go in the order that they appear in your thesis statement, which is why I'm going to start here with history. So I'm going to start with a topic sentence. It's going to introduce that thing. It's going to tie it back to my thesis. And I'm going to say history makes baseball wonderful because, and then I'm going to give some more evidence. I'm going to give some more facts and details about what exactly it is that makes baseball wonderful. And that's fortunately here in the brainstorm. Remember where I talked about the details for the reasons? I came up with these things. I talked about, how it started, how it changed America, how it's America's game. I talked about all those different things as great reasons for why history helped to show baseball's greatness. So I'm going to use those details and those specific facts to help me get across my point inside the body paragraphs. It's a really nice thing to be able to do. And I'm going to come back now to my body paragraphs and I'm going to work in my evidence here. I'll talk about my evidence in the topic sentence after I figure out exactly what I'm going to use. Let's start, I might talk about how baseball began. And I can say that baseball was invented in a place called Cooperstown, New York, by a man named Abner Doubleday. And fun fact about Abner Doubleday is that he actually ended up becoming a hero in the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War, which is an interesting thing. He took over actually part of the Union Army. He was a really big war hero there, and it's also interesting that he's also the inventor of baseball. So I've got that, and I can talk a little bit more because baseball started there, but it sort of grew in popularity really quickly throughout the 19th century, and so the game was made popular really first in New York City, which is where a lot of immigrants and different people were coming in, but also a lot of people were moving through New York City. But so it spread from New York City to places like Miami, where there was like Pelicans and Flamingo teams, and all the way up to Anchorage in Alaska, which after we purchased it from Russia, there were teams in Alaska. Gold Panners were playing baseball there. So I mean, it got popular very quickly. Another thing, because it got so popular all around the country, all the parts of different countries had their own leagues. And I mean, it was the first sport that really had its own pro league. So it had the first pro league before the NFL, before the NBA, before the Football Association, the Premier League in England. It had all these things. And yeah, that's another really interesting fact about it. But if you notice here, I was supposed to just try to get that evidence 1 to fit in that area. And I'm all the way down through justification 1 and into evidence 2. That's a lot of good facts, but that's not going to be the focus of my paragraph. I need to keep the focus on why baseball is the best, not just that baseball has a lot of history behind it. So even though I wrote a bunch of that stuff, I'm going to need to go back and I'm going to need to probably cut some of this out. And I just need to think about what's most important and what's necessary. In the first pro league, it's an interesting fact, but it's not all that necessary. I like talking about how Abner Doubleday was the hero in Gettysburg, but that also is not as important as the game itself. It's more about Doubleday than it is about the game. So I can talk about how baseball was invented in Cooperstown, New York, and made popular in New York and spread. So I'm going to write this down in one sentence. If I can get my evidence down into one clear sentence, short and sweet, then I've got a much better start to my essay. So I'm going to say that baseball was invented and popularized. Oh shoot, I'm sorry, I ran out of room there. Sorry, but you know what I mean. Popularized. Baseball was invented and popularized in New York, but spread around across our country from Miami to Anchorage. I might include that fact there myself. I like being able to say specific places, but I'll leave it there now. That's a very short piece of evidence. It's one sentence. It's clear cut. It says exactly what I was saying before. It just says it over and done with. And now the important thing to do is to talk about the justification and why what I've just said makes baseball great. So I can talk about how it spread across the country and how that's a great thing, how that is part of our society. So since it started where our country started, it grew with us and shows how America will always find a way to unite. Yeah, I like that. Because it talks about how we're America and how out of many places we are one thing. It's a nice touch. I'm talking about sort of how it's America's game, but I haven't really talked about how it's the best yet. But that is my opinion. That's not a fact. So now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to talk about how it's the best sport, how growing, how changing, how reflecting our country makes it such a good sport. And so what I can write here is I could write about, here we go. If you are American, you should love baseball too. If you love America, you should love baseball too. Sorry, I think I misspoke there. But now what I did there is I made it about my reader, and I made it about how you should love it and how it matters and how important it is. And I'm going to try to bring out the fact that it's the best here. I'm wondering if maybe I need another sentence. I could go with this for now and see if maybe I can think of something else for my other ones. I'll come up with another piece of evidence here. I'll talk about Jackie Robinson and baseball and how Jackie Robinson really helped this too. Jackie Robinson and baseball together broke down racism in America. You know, they broke down segregation. You couldn't integrate a lot of stadiums and a lot of sports. There were no African Americans playing other sports until Robinson played baseball. So that's a really big thing, or playing in white leagues, I should say. And you know, there are lots of other really interesting things about Jackie Robinson too. You might not know this, but Jackie Robinson was also a tremendous college athlete at the University of California, Los Angeles, or what we call UCLA. He was a great football player. He was also is a tremendous athlete all around. He also he ran track, and he was so exciting. I mean, that's part of what made him so exciting on the base pass was because he was a track runner, and so he was so fast that he threw off a lot of players. But you know, if you look at this example here, am I just talking about history, or am I talking about something else? Yeah, see, I'm going to talk about athleticism in paragraph 2 and exciting stuff in paragraph 3. So what I just did there with my evidence is actually I got a little bit off topic. I want everything in this paragraph to relate back to history. So I'll save the tremendous athlete stuff for paragraph 2, and I'll save the exciting stuff for paragraph 3. I can always go back and talk about Jackie Robinson, but I don't have to talk about him right here. I'll talk just about how he and baseball helped to break down racism. And now I'm going to, again, try to justify this. So what I'm going to start talking about here is I'm going to specifically talk about how without baseball, our country, because I talked about our country before too, without baseball, our country would have been slow to change. I don't think we would have maybe gotten quite as fast as we did. People have said that Jackie Robinson really got things going. So I can say that Jackie Robinson and baseball, or I don't have to keep repeating baseball, I can say, and the game he loved, because he did love the game, are excellent because they made our country better. And now if you look at this example, what you can see is I'm talking about good things. I'm talking about how baseball is good, how it's excellent, how it makes our country better. And I'm talking about the audience, myself and the audience. I keep using our country, our country. I'm talking about both of those things. So if in good justification, what you really want is to tie back to the thesis sentence and to tie into your reader. Both of my justifications do that. And that's what makes them stronger justifications, and that's what makes my essay a little bit stronger. So now I'm going to come to the last thing, and that's going to be the conclusion or transition. And what I need to do here is I need to work on how exactly my conclusion or my transition links from one paragraph into the next. Throughout this body paragraph, my focus has been on the justification. You need mostly justification here. But what's great about this is to link all those opinions together, all this opinion and evidence is these notes. So I'm going to tie back now to athleticism. So throughout baseball's history, say that's my topic here, right? Throughout baseball's history, it's had the best athletes. And now I'm talking about athletes and I'm talking about athleticism, and those are things that I can talk about now into my second paragraph. So, as you look into writing your own body paragraphs, I encourage you to follow this structure. It's going to probably lead to about 7 sentences in each paragraph. You're going to have the topic sentence that introduces clearly what your opinion is and ties it back to the thesis. I also need here to make sure that I hint at my evidence. So I'm going to come back here and say it's wonderful because of how it started. That's my first piece of evidence. And how it changed our country, how it's changed us. That's good. So now I've got those little hints there. You don't have to write them right away. I sometimes wait with my topic sentence until after I know for sure what my evidence is going to be. When I write my evidence, I want to keep it really short, really sweet, cut and simple, 1 sentence maximum, and then I want to go into more depth with my justification. And remember, my justification needs to tie back to my thesis sentence about how baseball is the best, and it needs to tie into the person who's reading this, and I need to make it important for them in some way. So I need to talk to them. You, our, those are good words to do that. Finally, the conclusion transition links my paragraphs together and allows me to sum up what I just said, talking about history and linking into the next topic, which in this case is athleticism. Now I'm going to save some time here, and I'm not going to do all the body paragraphs. That's model sort of works for them all. I'm going to jump ahead here to the conclusion. And the conclusion is very straightforward. We're going to restate the thesis. Remember right here, baseball is the best sport because of its history, athleticism, and how exciting it is. So I'm going to write that again, and that's going to be my first sentence of my conclusion. I don't have to exactly copy it down, so I can say history, athleticism, and excitement. I'll say athletic ability, just to sort of change this up, and excitement make baseball the best sport. Or I can just say the best too. I can leave it with that. That's all I really need. If you're rushed, if you're under time pressure, I say just leave it with the restated thesis and you're done. It's short, it's simple, it's to the point. Nobody's going to get too confused. That's the best thing to do. If you want to go for a little bit more of a challenge, you want to tie all the way back to the very beginning of your essay and that hook, the way that you got people interested. You can try to connect your thesis back to the hook, or you can just sort of try to jam them together. It can be 2 sentences, it can be 3 sentences, but ultimately you want your conclusion to be pretty much your shortest paragraph. So I'm going to try to be short and sweet about this too. I'm going to tie back to the John Fowles quote. I can say, so John Fowles was right to love baseball, or to love it, but I need to tie back to his quote here, so I can say, but he missed the thing about chess, baseball. Oh, this is a new sentence. I need to capitalize that later. Sorry. Baseball is better than chess. Now I've sort of made fun of the fact that baseball is chess made flesh, and I'm saying baseball is not just chess made flesh; it's better than chess, because chess is boring and it's not the best sport. Baseball is the best sport. I just wrote a whole essay about that. So I've tied back to my hook and my echo there. Like I said, this is not totally necessary. It's just a little thing that you can do if you want to give yourself a little bit more of a challenge to try to unite the beginning and the end so it comes out in one big circle. It's a nice way of having that happen. Now, if you notice on these things, I've got these little points here, restate, thesis, connection. Obviously, when you actually turn in the essay, you don't want to have all those little bits there. So this is going to be the final product. You might see there that I've got my name up on top, English 9 in this case, and what period I'm in, the teacher I'm working with, the date. And then I've got my final product that goes there, and I'm double spacing everything. and I'm indenting the first line of whatever I'm doing. I've checked this through for punctuation and spelling. I've made that a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. And through it all, I've got my introduction. It's my first paragraph. I've got 3 body paragraphs. You have as many body paragraphs as you need for the assignment, and then you conclude. It's short, simple. This is really about, I would say, I'm ballparking at about 700 words. It took a grand total of 25 minutes, and that was with a few mistakes. So you can easily handle this too. I'm sure you guys are smart enough to do it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask any teacher. They're all happy to help you. And I'll hope that you guys found this enjoyable. Have a great night.